My son had been traveling for work for 2 years at least. That's what my daughter-in-law told me. Sloane was always so attentive, almost too much. But one Saturday morning at the farmer's market, a delivery driver slipped a package into my hands and whispered, "Are you Nash's father?" When I nodded, he glanced around nervously. "I can't keep this anymore. Watch it alone." I drove home and opened it at my kitchen table. What I found inside made the room spin. Before I tell you what was inside that package, I need to know where. Are you watching this from right now, and what time is it where you are? The Saturday morning farmer's market in Riverside, Oregon had been my weekly ritual for decades. At 63, I'd learned to find comfort in the familiar rhythm selecting tomatoes from Martha's stand, trading weather talk with neighbors who'd known me since Rose and I bought the ranch 40 years ago. The October air carried that particular crispness that reminded me of easier times. My name is Henry Hayes, and for 3 years, 2 months, and 8 days, I'd been telling everyone that my son Nash was thriving overseas with his consulting career. Dubai, Singapore, Tokyo. His wife, Sloane, explained it with practiced ease whenever someone asked. The modern professional life, she'd say with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I wanted to believe her. God knows I tried. I was examining late-season apples when I felt someone watching me. "Mr. Hayes." The voice belonged to a man in his 30s, wearing a delivery company uniform, his face pale. His hands trembled as he extended a package wrapped in brown paper. "You're Nash Hayes' father?" "I am." I set down my basket. "Do I know you?" "No, sir. My name's Dean Shaw." He glanced around the crowded market like a deer scenting wolves. "I've been making deliveries for someone, and I saw your son and I." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I can't keep this anymore. The truth matters. Mr. Hayes, whatever they've told you, the truth matters." He pressed the package into my hands with sudden urgency, then backed away. "I'm sorry. I tried to do what was right, but I have a family. I can't." He disappeared into the Saturday crowd before I could ask what he meant. I made it to my truck before my hands started shaking. The package sat on the passenger seat, innocuous brown paper, concealing whatever had driven a stranger to seek me out with fear in his eyes. I drove the 10 home on autopilot, my mind racing. The ranch stood at the end of a long gravel drive, surrounded by 30 acres. Rose and I had built our life on after she passed 2 years ago. The silence had become a weight I carried in every empty corner. Now I set the package on the kitchen table, the same oak surface where we'd shared countless family meals, and forced my fingers to steady. Inside, I found a USB drive, a folded letter, and a photograph that stopped my heart. The photograph showed Nash, unmistakably, my son. Despite the gaunt hollows in his cheeks and the haunted look in his eyes I'd never seen before. He stood in front of a concrete wall holding a newspaper. The date was visible, April 14th of this year, 6 months ago. But it wasn't just Nash's appearance that turned my blood cold. It was the setting, the institutional quality of the background, the way he seemed to be posing reluctantly, as though compelled. This wasn't a business trip. This wasn't Dubai or Singapore. The letter in my hand began simply, "Mr. Hayes, my name is Dean Shaw. I work for Quick Ship Deliveries. And for the past year, I've been making deliveries to a facility outside Portland. On behalf of your daughter Yunali." I looked back at the photograph, then at the USB drive sitting on a kitchen table like a loaded gun. The photograph showed my son standing in front of a concrete wall holding a newspaper dated 6 months ago. He wasn't in Dubai. He'd never left Oregon at all. For a long moment, I just stared at the photograph. Then my hand steadied, and I reached for the USB drive. Rose's old laptop sat on the corner of the kitchen table. She'd given it to me 3 years, clear for my birthday, insisting I learn to use email so I could stay in touch with Nash overseas. The irony wasn't lost on me as I powered it on and inserted the drive. 6 video files appeared on screen, each labeled with dates spanning the past 14 months. I clicked the first one. My kitchen materialized the same room where I sat now, filmed from an angle near the ceiling. The timestamp showed last November, Tuesday afternoon. I watched Sloane enter through the back door using her key move directly to the cabinet where I kept financial documents and photographed page after page with her phone. 4 minutes later, she was gone. I'd been at book club that day. The second video showed Rose's study, Sloane rifling through files my wife had meticulously organized, photographing tax returns and property deeds. The third caught her in the basement, searching storage boxes I hadn't opened since Rose passed. Each video revealed the same methodical pattern, Sloane moving through my home, like a professional systematically documenting anything related to the ranch or our assets. My initial shock hardened into something colder. I set the videos aside and unfolded Dean Shaw's letter fully. His handwriting was cramped, urgent. Mr. Hayes, I work for Quick Ship Deliveries. For the past year, I've been making deliveries to a facility outside Portland for your daughter-in-law. Good money, no questions asked. 3 weeks ago, I saw your son through a window during a delivery run. He looked at me with this recognition not of me, but of the outside world itself, like a prisoner glimpsing daylight. Dean described how he'd started asking questions, following up with contacts, piecing together what was really happening. Nash wasn't traveling. He'd been institutionalized the entire time. I have a family. I've been warned about interference, but your son needs help. I can't give. Someone has to know. The letter ended there unsigned beyond the type name. I opened the final file on the USB drive. A medical report, clinical and precise. Patient Nash James Hayes. Facility Cedarbrook Care Center, 2847 Riverside Drive, Portland. Diagnosis: severe traumatic brain injury. Cognitive impairment requiring ongoing supervision. Legal guardian Sloan Calloway. Visiting restrictions guardian. Approval required. The admission date stopped me cold. 3 years, 2 months, 9 days ago. One day after Nash had supposedly left for his first assignment in Dubai, Sloan had taken legal guardianship while I'd been telling neighbors my son was building his career overseas. She'd locked him away in a facility less than an hour from my ranch, close enough that I could have driven there any Saturday after the farmer's market. And for 3 years, she'd been systematically searching my home, photographing documents, looking for something, but what? I sat in the darkening kitchen, Rose's laptop glowing before me, and understood the scope of the deception. My son wasn't abroad. He'd been imprisoned, his life stolen, while his wife maintained the perfect lie, and hunted through my house for whatever would complete her plan. Tomorrow I'd see Sloan when she dropped off the kids. Tomorrow, I'd have to look her in the eye and pretend I knew nothing. My hands no longer trembled. The fear had burned away, leaving only cold, clear purpose. The next morning, my phone buzzed. "Sloan, can you watch Ivy and Knox today?" Something came up, I replied with steady fingers. Of course, happy to have them. Within the hour, my grandchildren tumbled through the door. Knock, 6 years old, launched himself at my legs, clutching the old toy truck that had once been Nash's. Ivy hung back 8, and already too perceptive, studying my face with dark eyes she had inherited from her father, who wants to make cookies. I led them into the kitchen where Rose had taught Nash to bake. We mixed flour and sugar. Knox chatted non-stop, but Ivy remained quiet, measuring ingredients with careful precision. "Grandpa," her voice was barely above a whisper, "when is Daddy coming home?" The wooden spoon still in my hand. I thought of the photograph, Nash's gaunt face, those haunted eyes. 3 years stolen while I'd believed Sloan's lies. "Your daddy loves you very much, sweetheart. No matter where he is, that never changes. Mommy says he's too busy to call." Knox's enthusiasm dimmed. "Did Daddy forget us?" I knelt down, pulling them both close. "Never. Your father would never forget you. I promise." Ivy's eyes searched mine. "You promise?" "I promise I'll find out what's happening with your daddy." After lunch, they played in the yard, while I watched. From the porch, Knox ran through the tall grass with his truck. Ivy sat under Rose's apple tree drawing in her notebook. When she showed me later, it was our family stick figures holding hands. But the one labeled Daddy stood apart, separated by a dark line across the page. Sloan arrived at 6, perfectly composed in designer jeans and cashmere. "Thank you so much, Henry. I don't know what I'd do without you any time. They're good kids." She lingered at the door, and I recognized the shift, the subtle preparation for what she'd really come to say. "By the way, I've been helping Nash sort out some investment questions remotely. I thought Rose might have kept copies of certain financial documents, old property records, maybe trust papers. You and Rose were always so organized." There it was. The real reason she needed me to watch the kids. I kept my face neutral. "I'm not sure what I can look if you'd like." Relief flickered across her face. "That'd be wonderful. No rush. Maybe I could come by next week and we could go through things together." "Sure thing." After she left with the kids, I stood alone in my kitchen, understanding, crystallizing. Sloan had searched my home for 3 years, photographed every document she could find, but still hadn't located what she needed. Now she was asking directly, and I just agreed to help her find it. But there was one place she didn't know about, one place I'd nearly forgotten myself. Rose had always been meticulous about important papers. After she passed, I'd found a small key in her desk drawer with a tag reading Riverside Community Bank Box 247 at the time. I'd set it aside, too grief-stricken to deal with paperwork. Tomorrow, I'd go to that bank and see what my wife had hidden away, what she'd kept secret, even from me. Whatever Sloane was searching for, Rose had made sure it stayed out of her reach. Monday morning arrived too fast. I stood before Riverside Community Bank at 9 sharp, clutching the small key I'd found in Rose's desk drawer. A key I'd forgotten about until Sloane's questions reminded me it existed. The young clerk smiled pleasantly as I approached. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes. How can I help you? I need to access my late wife's safety deposit box." I slid the key across the counter along with my identification. She checked her computer, nodded, and led me through the heavy vault door into a private viewing room. The metal box slid out smoothly, heavier than I'd expected. She left me alone with whatever Rose had hidden away. Inside, I found a legal document labeled Hayes Family Trust, confidential, a sealed envelope marked, "For Henry, if you're reading this, I'm gone," and copies of property deeds and financial records. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope first. Rose's familiar handwriting filled the pages dated 6 months before she passed. "My dearest Henry, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I pray you never needed to find it. But I've learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts about Sloane have troubled me for years. I've noticed things small at first. Lies about where she's been, money that doesn't match her salary, the way she watches Nash when she thinks no one is looking. Not with love, but with calculation. I've created this trust without telling anyone except Chase Holt. It protects Nash and the children. If anything happens to Nash, if Sloane tries to control his assets or ours, this document prevents it. The ranch, the land, everything stays in trust for Nash and the kids, managed by you. She gets nothing. Fight for our son, Henry. Don't trust obvious answers. You're stronger than you know. All my love, Rose." I sat in that small bank room, Rose's letter in my hands, and felt something break open inside my chest. My wife had known. Somehow she'd sensed the danger before any of us, and she'd tried to protect us from beyond the grave. 20 minutes later, I burst into Chase Holt's office downtown. The old lawyer looked up from his desk, concern etching his features when he saw my face. "Henry, what's wrong?" I laid out everything. The package from Dean Shaw, the videos, the medical report Nash imprisoned at Cedarbrook Sloane's guardianship, her systematic search of my home. Chase listened without interrupting, his expression darkening with each revelation. "Rose came to me 3 years ago," he said, finally pulling a file from his cabinet. "Right after her diagnosis, she was worried about something, but wouldn't say exactly what. This trust is ironclad, Henry. It supersedes everything. Sloane has no access to your assets or Nash's inheritance. Can she contest it? She can try, but Rose was of sound mind when she created it, and the medical records from that period prove it." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "However, if what you're telling me is true, if Sloane obtained guardianship through fraud, she's committed multiple felonies. We need evidence stronger than videos and suspicion. We need proof from inside that facility." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. "Ford Steele, former FBI. If anyone can get the proof we need, it's him." I took the card, studying the simple text. "I'll call him Henry." Chase's voice was grave. "These people are dangerous." A journalist started asking questions about facilities like Cedarbrook 6 months ago. She published one article about guardianship exploitation. The article disappeared from the website within 48 hours. 2 weeks later, she died in a hit and run. The case was never solved. Chase handed me the business card. "Ford Steele Private Investigations. If anyone can get the proof we need, it's him. But Henry, these people are dangerous. Be very, very careful." That evening, Ford Steele appeared at my ranch after dark, moving like a man accustomed to danger. He'd swept my property for surveillance devices before knocking a precaution that made Chase's warnings feel suddenly terrifyingly real. "No bugs I could find," he said by way of greeting. "But assume you're being watched anyway." Inside, I laid out everything while Ford examined the videos, the medical report, Dean Shaw's letter. His face remained impassive until I mentioned Nash. "At Cedarbrook, this is bigger than family fraud." Ford's voice was flat, professional. I knew Quinn Drake, the journalist who investigated these facilities. She was careful, thorough, published one article about guardianship exploitation before it vanished from the newspaper website within 48 hours. 2 weeks later, hit and run on Interstate 5, Driver never found. He met my eyes. If they killed a reporter for asking questions, they won't hesitate with a rancher doing the same. The words settled like ice in my gut. Ford outlined what he called operational security. Cash only for anything related to the investigation. No phone discussions about the case. Innocent explanations for any unusual activity. Trust no one. I'll start with Cedarbrook pose as a family member looking to place a relative. Get inside. Assess the situation. But this takes time, and if they're watching you, we need to be smart about every move. After he left, I sat in the darkness of my kitchen, understanding for the first time that I wasn't just fighting Sloan, I was fighting something much larger, much more ruthless. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Stop asking questions about Nash Hayes. This is your only warning. I forwarded it to Ford without responding. That afternoon, Sloan showed up unannounced, perfectly composed in a tailored blazer. I was in the area. Found some forms, just medical record authorization for Nash's care coordination. Could you sign here? I took the papers but didn't open them. I'll have Chase review these first. Her smile tightened. Your lawyer, Henry. It's just standard paperwork. I don't sign anything without legal review. That's just common sense. Something flickered across her face. Calculation, maybe anger, before the mask returned. Of course, take your time. After she left, I called Chase. He asked me to scan the form and send it over. 20 minutes later, he called back. Don't sign that. It would give her lawyers access to all your medical records, including psychiatric evaluations. They could cherry-pick anything to support an incompetency claim. She's building a case against me. I'm afraid it's worse than that. Wednesday morning at 9:15, a courier delivered an official document, petition for competency evaluation. Sloan Calloway requests the court determine Henry Hayes is unable to manage his own affairs due to increasing forgetfulness, missed appointments, paranoid accusations against family members, and confusion about dates and events. Attached statements from Dr. Sagecross, noting I'd seemed distracted during recent appointments. Grief over Rose twisted into evidence of decline. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks from today. If she won, Sloan would control everything. My ranch, my finances, my freedom to fight for Nash. She'd make me exactly what she'd made my son, a prisoner of her guardianship, while she dismantled our lives. I called Chase immediately. She's trying to do to me what she did to Nash. His voice was grim when he answered. She's moving faster than I expected, Henry. This is aggressive. We need evidence, solid, irrefutable proof that Nash's guardianship was fraudulent, and we need it within 3 weeks. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks from today. Chase's voice crackled through the phone. She's escalating because she's worried. We need evidence, Henry's solid, irrefutable proof, and we need it fast. The days had blurred into a haze of preparation and dread. Then, 10 days before the hearing, Ford called at dawn. Yeah, I found someone inside, he said without preamble. She's willing to talk. By 6 o'clock that morning, a woman in her early 30s stood in my kitchen, dark circles under her eyes and a USB drive clutched in her hand. Page North. She'd worked at Cedarbrook for 4 years as a registered nurse until 2 weeks ago when her conscience finally won. I can't testify, she said immediately, her voice tight. I have a daughter. I saw what happened to that reporter who asked questions, but I made copies before I left. She slid the drive across the table like it burned her fingers. Behind her, Ford stood silent, watching the windows. Nash Hayes is listed as severe traumatic brain injury with diminished capacity, Page said, but his chart notes don't match that diagnosis. His cognitive assessments show normal function. His vitals are stable. He communicates clearly with staff when we're allowed to interact with him, which isn't often. My hands shook as I picked up the drive. Why the restrictions? Dr. Flynn West signs off on everything, Sloan requests. Minimal contact, no outside calls, limited recreation time. The billing goes through at $18,500 a month, but the actual care level. She shook her head. Maybe $5,000. The rest disappears into administrative fees and services Nash never receives. She pulled out printed emails. I recognized Sloan's name in the header, Dr. West's in the reply. We need to maintain necessary restrictions given the guardianship circumstances. Family contact remains inadvisable at this time. There are dozens of cases like Nash at Cedarbrook, Page said quietly. People who could go home. People whose families don't even know they're there. It's a system, Mr. Hayes, and your son got caught in it. Ford walked her out. When he returned, He handed me a second set of documents, photos he'd taken during a midnight reconnaissance of Cedarbrook's exterior floor plan shift schedules. Sloane's hosting a video call tonight. He said 6 o'clock. You, Nash, and the grandkids. She thinks it'll make her look good for the competency, hearing the devoted daughter and keeping the family connected. But we're going to watch her son very carefully. That evening, Sloane's living room felt like a stage. Ivy and Knox sat beside me on the couch, scrubbed and nervous. The laptop screen flickered, and then Nash appeared. He looked thinner than in Dean's photograph, tired, but his eyes were clear. "Hi, Dad," he said, his voice rough but steady. Ivy and Knox erupted in excited chatter. Nash smiled at them, asked about school, about the ranch. Every response was lucid, appropriate, present. Then his gaze locked on mine, and I saw it. The deliberate blink, the slight tap of his fingers against his chest, the micro-expression that said, "I'm here, I'm aware, I need you to see me." Sloane hovered at the edge of frame monitoring. Nash kept talking to the kids, kept his voice light, but his eyes never left mine. When the call ended, I sat in the silence of Sloane's house and understood my son wasn't sick. He was trapped. Sunday night, Chase called with the news. Dean Shore dead. Single vehicle accident on Highway 26. 3 days after delivering a mysterious package. The police called it driver fatigue. I knew better. The hearing was now 9 days away. We had our evidence, but I also knew the cost of speaking the truth, and how far someone would go to bury it. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray. I drove to Portland alone, leaving the ranch before sunrise. The weight of Rose's trust document, and Dean Shore's sacrifice pressing against my chest. Multnomah County Courthouse rose from the downtown blocks like a monument to judgment. Inside, the wood-paneled courtroom felt designed to intimidate high ceilings, fluorescent lights that washed everything pale. The judge's bench elevated like an altar. Sloane sat across the aisle with 3 lawyers flanking her. Blair Storm, her lead counsel, looked expansive and sharp in a charcoal suit. Sloane herself wore navy blue, in an expression of concerned worry, the devoted daughter-in-law forced to make difficult decisions. I wanted to be sick. At 9 o'clock exactly, we rose for Judge Grace Mills. She was in her early 60s. Gray hair, pulled back, eyes that missed nothing. Her reputation preceded her, fair but intolerant of games. Blair Storm opened with practiced sympathy. "Your Honor, we're here because of serious concerns regarding Henry Hayes' declining mental competency. Over recent months, Mr. Hayes has exhibited forgetfulness, missed medical appointments, and made paranoid accusations against his daughter-in-law. He claims his son, who receives necessary care for a traumatic brain injury, is being held captive. He alleges his loving daughter-in-law has broken into his home. These are not the actions of someone capable of managing a 30-acre ranch and substantial assets." She presented doctor's notes, incident reports. I listened as every truth I discovered got twisted into evidence of delusion. Each word felt like a knife. Chase stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Hayes isn't incompetent. He's uncovered a criminal conspiracy, and Miss Calloway is attempting to silence him the same way she silenced his son." Objection. Blair's voice cracked like a whip. Judge Mills raised one hand. "I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Holt." Chase set up his laptop with deliberate calm. "Your Honor, these are security recordings from Mr. Hayes' residence. The first video filled the screen. Date stamp. Last November. Sloane appeared using her own key, entering while I was away at a cattle auction. She moved with purpose straight to the file cabinet in Rose's old office, photographing documents, searching with methodical efficiency. The courtroom stirred. A second video, different date, same pattern. A third, fourth, 6 videos, total spanning 14 months. Every time I left the property, Sloane had entered, documenting, searching. Sloane's face drained of color. Blair scrambled. "Your Honor, Miss Calloway has a key. She was simply concerned about her father-in-law's welfare." "Welfare checks don't include photographing financial documents and rifling through private papers." Chase cut in. This was a calculated intrusion to locate something specific. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the truth is Nash Hayes isn't incapacitated. His guardianship was obtained through fraud. We have medical evidence from facility staff that he's fully lucid and has been trying to contact his family for months. We request Nash Hayes be brought before this court for independent psychiatric evaluation." Blair exploded objection. "This is inappropriate outside the scope. Nash Hayes is severely impaired. Transporting him would cause psychological trauma. Judge Mill's gavel came down once. Miss Storm, if Mr. Hayes is as impaired as you claim, an evaluation will confirm it. If he's not, we have serious questions about this guardianship. She looked at the bailiff. I'm ordering Nash Hayes brought to this courthouse immediately for evaluation by a court-appointed psychiatrist. We'll reconvene at 2 p.m. The gavel struck steel against wood. Sloane's composure cracked for just a moment as she leaned toward her lawyers, whispering urgently. In 2 hours, my son would walk through that courtroom door, and the truth would finally step into the light. At exactly 2 o'clock, the courtroom doors opened. They wheeled Nash in a wheelchair. He didn't need part of Sloane's final performance. He looked thin, exhausted, but his eyes found mine immediately blazing with recognition and fierce hope. I hadn't seen my son in 3 years, 2 months, and 8 days. The man in that chair wasn't the ghost Sloane had described. He was trapped, but he was present. Judge Mills nodded to the bailiff. Bring in Dr. Stone. Dr. Wade Stone, the court-appointed psychiatrist, took the stand with the calm authority of someone who dealt in facts, not manipulation. Your Honor, I've completed my evaluation of Nash Hayes. My findings. Mr. Hayes is fully lucid. He understands his circumstances, communicates clearly, and shows no signs of the impairment described in facility records. He does not require a guardian, and should be allowed to speak for himself. In my professional opinion, his continued institutionalization has no medical basis. The courtroom erupted. Judge Mill's gavel cracked down. Blairtorm tried to object, but the judge cut her off. Dr. Stone's credentials are impeccable. Mr. Hayes, do you understand why you're here? Nash's voice came rough from disuse, but clear. Yes, Your Honor. I understand my wife petitioned for guardianship, claiming I was incompetent. I understand she's now trying to do the same thing to my father, and I understand it's time to tell the truth. Then please do. Nash took a breath. I watched him gather strength from some reserve I didn't know he still had. 3 years ago, my wife and I argued about money. I have a trust fund my mother established with specific restrictions on access. Sloane wanted me to break those restrictions, withdraw the principal immediately for investments. I refused. She became aggressive, angry. We were standing near the top of the stairs in our house. She pushed me. I fell. His voice stayed steady, factual. I woke up in the hospital with a head injury, confused. By the time I was clear-headed enough to understand what happened, she'd secured guardianship. Told doctors I was having delusions. I was violent. I tried to tell facility staff, but Dr. Flynn West dismissed it as post-trauma fabrication. I tried to get messages out, but every communication was monitored, controlled. I've been in prison for 3 years, Your Honor. Locked away while my wife drained my accounts and searched my father's house for documents that would let her control everything. Blairtorm lunged to her feet. This is textbook false memory from brain trauma. Chase stood calmly. Your Honor, there's one more piece of evidence. He nodded to Ford. The recording played a conversation from the courthouse hallway 90 minutes earlier during recess. Sloane's voice confronting Henry in a moment she thought was private. You should have signed what I needed, Henry. You should have stayed confused and compliant. Nash was never good enough, never ambitious enough. When he fell down those stairs, I saw an opportunity to protect my children's inheritance from his incompetence. Control everything. You forced me into steps I didn't want to take. Oregon's one-party consent law made Ford's recording legal. He'd been part of the conversation, standing beside Henry the entire time. The courtroom went silent. Judge Mills's face was granite. I've heard enough. Nash Hayes's guardianship is terminated effective immediately. Ms. Calloway's petition regarding Henry Hayes is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Hayes will be discharged from Cedarbrook today. I'm ordering immediate investigation into Ms. Calloway for guardianship fraud, financial exploitation, and possible attempted homicide. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck like thunder. As the sound echoed, Sloane's face went bloodless. That evening, she was arrested at her home, the beginning of justice, but not yet the end. 6 months after the trial, Nash and the kids had moved back to the ranch. The house that felt hollow after Rose died, now brimmed with life's children's laughter. My son's voice reading bedtime stories. The sound of healing. What followed the trial came swift and thorough. Sloane was convicted on multiple counts. Guardianship, fraud, financial exploitation, conspiracy. 15 years in prison, no early parole. The Cedarbrook investigation expanded like wildfire. Dr. Flynn West and 3 staff arrested for conspiracy. 12 other patients identified in similar circumstances. People hidden away by families seeking control of assets. Stolen lives locked behind coded doors. All freed guardianships reviewed. The facility shuttered permanently. Page North received immunity in exchange for testimony. Now working for a guardianship reform advocacy group. Dean Shaw's family learned the truth about his heroic actions. I visited them personally, made sure they knew their husband and father had saved Nash's life. Without Dean's courage, that Saturday morning at the market, my son would still be imprisoned. We owe him everything. Quindrake's death investigation was reopened, though no charges filed yet. Nash came home 3 days after the hearing. Ivy and Knox a week later after family therapy. The transition was hardest on the kids. Their mother in prison, their father, someone they barely remembered, their grandfather who had seemed old, suddenly revealed as a fierce warrior. But gradually, healing came. Nash took over ranch work, mending fences, tending cattle tasks his body remembered. Even when his mind wrestled with 3 lost years. Therapy for all of them. Rebuilding relationships through small moments. Pancake breakfast, homework, help bedtime stories. Nash was relearning how to chill. Ivy struggled more, angry at her mother, grieving the future she had imagined. Knox proved more resilient, younger, and adaptable. Family dinners every night. Passing dishes. Sharing days. Slowly stitching back what Sloan had torn apart. One autumn evening, 6 months gone, I sat on the porch, watching sunset spill across my fields. Nash sat beside me, Knox in his lap, Ivy leaning against my chair. Fireflies began their dance. I never thanked you properly, Nash said quietly. For not giving up, for believing when you couldn't even talk to me. I squeezed my son's shoulder. You're my boy. Giving up was never an option. Inside Rose's photo stood on the mantel beside her framed letter. Words I'd memorized. Fight for our son. You're stronger than you think. I had not through violence or wealth or power, but by refusing to accept comfortable lies, by trusting instinct, by taking one step at a time when everything seemed impossible. Truth had won. Justice had come. Not loud, not celebrated in newspapers, but here, in my son's laughter, my grandchildren's healing. The ranch reclaimed from those who'd tried to steal it. Grandpa, tell us a story, Ivy asked. I smiled. Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he understood everything about his family. I told them a carefully edited version about the heroic father held prisoner, the brave grandfather who fought for truth and justice that prevailed. Someday they'd know all the details. Tonight, they needed hope. The stars emerged. Fireflies glowed. Family together. This was victory. This was everything. Looking back on this true story, I see a man who almost lost everything because I chose comfort over truth. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the warning signs when someone you trust starts controlling the narrative. Don't wait 3 years to ask the hard questions. God gave us instincts for a reason. That unease. I felt watching Sloan's smile never reach her eyes. The wrongness of Nash's sudden travels. I ignored those gifts God planted in my spirit, because confronting them seemed too hard. That nearly cost me my son. Here's what these grandpa stories have taught me. Evil thrives when good people choose convenience over courage. When that package arrived at the farmer's market, God was offering me a chance to fight. I could have dismissed it, called it a mistake, gone back to my comfortable lie. Instead, I chose the harder path and found my family on the other side. This true story isn't unique. Right now, somewhere in America, another family is being torn apart by guardianship, fraud, financial exploitation, someone using the legal system as a weapon. These grandpa stories need to be told, heard, and shared because they carry lessons that might save someone's life. Your courage to speak up could be the difference. God put you in your family for a purpose. Don't let fear silence you when something feels wrong. That's the heart of all grandpa stories worth telling. We fight for those we love. If this true story moved you, please leave a comment below, sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful narrative. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Together, we fight for truth. My daughter said, "Dad, let's go on a picnic." I never imagined it would be my last trip. We drove deep into the forest. At noon, we rested together. My daughter told me to lean against a tree and nap. "We'll be right here, Dad." When I woke, they'd vanished. I was stranded alone in the deep woods. They'd left me to die. But that was just the start. The true nightmare began when I crawled home weeks later and discovered they'd already held my funeral. Before I tell you what happened next, Answer me this. What would you do if your own child abandoned you to die? And where are you watching this from right now? Drop your location and your answer in the comments, because after what I went through, I need to know I'm not alone. I opened my eyes and there was no one. Just trees, just silence, just the cold seeping into my bones. My head pounded like someone had taken a hammer to it. My mouth tasted bitter, metallic, wrong. I blinked hard, trying to focus, trying to understand where I was and why everything hurt. The backpack was still under my head. I'd used it as a pillow, just like I always did on camping trips. But the car was gone. Clarissa, my voice came out hoarse. Donovan. Nothing. Just the wind moving through the pines, carrying that sharp scent of Sierra Nevada wilderness, the kind Aurelia I used to love. I sat up slowly. Every muscle screamed. How long had I been lying here? The light was wrong. We'd eaten lunch around 1, and Clarissa had said I should rest. But now the sun was low, casting orange shadows through the trees. 6 o'clock in the evening, maybe later. 5 hours. Gone. Clarissa. Louder this time. Where are you? My heart raced. I pushed myself to my feet, stumbling. The clearing was still there. The blanket, the remains of lunch, but no car, no people, just wilderness stretching in every direction. They went to get something. I told myself, they'll be back. But even as I thought it, I knew it was wrong. This morning, Clarissa had shown up at my house in Sacramento, smiling. I hadn't seen her smile at me like that in years. Not since Aurelia died. Dad, let's go on a picnic. Just like old times. I'd been so happy, so pathetically happy, that my daughter wanted to spend time with me again. The drive up had been pleasant. 2 hours of winding roads, Donovan asking about my retirement, how I was managing alone. I'd felt like I mattered. Lunch had been nice too. Sandwiches, Clarissa made ham and cheese, my favorite, and juice. Donovan had poured it from a thermos. Here you go, Mr. Whitmore. Fresh squeeze this morning. I'd drunk it all. It tasted slightly bitter, but I thought maybe it was just the grapefruit. Then Clarissa had said it, that gentle voice. Dad, why don't you lie down? Rest. We'll be right here. I'd trusted her. Laid my head down, closed my eyes, and let sleep take me. But now, standing here in the fading light, that bitter taste rushed back. Not grapefruit, not fresh juice gone bad. I knew that taste. The same taste from 5 years ago when the doctor gave me sleeping pills after Aurelia died. When I couldn't sleep, couldn't function. Those little white pills that knocked me out for 10 hours straight. But this was stronger. Much stronger. My knees almost gave out. She drugged me. My own daughter drugged me and left me here. I turned in circles, searching for any sign of them, any sign of the road. But there was nothing. Just trees. Just the cold mountain air. Just the realizations settling in my chest like ice. They weren't coming back. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an accident. My 8-year-old hands started shaking. Not from the cold. From understanding hours passed. Then the sun began to set. I sat with my back against a pine tree facing the place where the car had been. Waiting. Still waiting. They went for help, I told myself. Maybe they drove down to find a ranger station. Maybe they were calling someone right now. Maybe they were already on their way back. Maybe. I wrapped the thin blanket tighter as the temperature dropped. Orange light faded to pink, then purple, then gray. I kept staring at the gap between the trees where my daughter should appear any moment, but the shadows stretched longer. The forest darkened. Nobody came. The cold arrived fast once the sun disappeared. Not a mild evening chill, but sharp mountain cold. I pulled my jacket close, but it wasn't enough. At 80, my body no longer held warmth. My fingers went numb, then my toes. I should have moved. I should have tried to make a fire. But moving meant accepting they weren't coming back. And I wasn't ready for that truth. The sound started after dark, rustling in the brush, something moving nearby. My heart jumped. A deer, I told myself. Just a deer. Then I heard it. Low, distant, howling. Wolves, coyotes. I didn't know. I'd spent my life selling medications in Sacramento, not surviving wilderness. The closest I came to nature were the plants Aurelia kept in our sunroom. Every snapping twig made me flinch. Every shadow shifted. I pulled my knees to my chest and tried to make myself small. My breath came in panicked gasps, fogging the freezing air. The night felt endless. I didn't sleep. I just sat there shivering, listening to the forest breathe, wondering what waited beyond the dark. When dawn finally arrived, gray and bitter, I had never been so grateful for light. My legs were numb. I tried to stand and nearly fell. Everything hurt, but I forced myself up. I needed certainty. I walked to where the car had been parked, where Donovan had pulled into the clearing, where we'd eaten sandwiches the day before. Nothing. No tire tracks, no oil stains, no sign a vehicle had ever been there. I dropped to my hands and knees, searching. That's when I saw it. Broken branches placed deliberately over dirt, leaves scattered too evenly, disturbed ground smoothed over. My stomach twisted. I staggered to the next path. More branches, more leaves. The same careful covering. Another path the same. Another again. They'd done this to all of them. Every possible exit. They'd erased every trace of where they'd driven in every direction leading out. They'd made sure I couldn't follow, couldn't escape. This wasn't carelessness. This was methodical, planned. My hands shook, not from cold, from rage, from understanding. Clarissa hadn't just abandoned me. She had ensured I'd die here. She covered her tracks like someone hiding a crime, because that's what this was. Murder. She was trying to murder me. Standing in that clearing at dawn, I understood something else. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't impulse. Someone planned this. The crushed sleeping pills in my juice, the remote location, the erased evidence, my own daughter, my baby girl, the child I held 49 years ago, the one I walked down the aisle, the one I gave everything to. She wanted me dead. As dawn broke on, the second morning, I searched again for tire tracks. I found none. Every path was carefully covered. Broken branches, evenly scattered leaves, every trace erased. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. My own daughter wanted me dead. By the third day, time had lost all meaning. I knew only that I was hungry. Desperately, impossibly hungry. This was not the gentle hunger of skipping breakfast. It felt alive inside me. My stomach no longer growled. It cramped, twisted, burned, as if my body was consuming itself. My mouth was a desert. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. My lips were cracked and bleeding. When I tried to swallow, there was nothing. Only the metallic taste of blood and bile. I had to find something. I stumbled through the underbrush, barely able to walk straight. The forest spun. Then I saw them, a bush with small red berries, bright against the green. Were they safe? I didn't know. I didn't care. I grabbed a handful and shoved them into my mouth. The taste hit instantly. Bitter, like chewing aspirin mixed with dirt. But I was starving. I swallowed and grabbed more. 5, 6, 7 berries. My eyes watered, but I kept eating. The cramps came immediately. Not hunger this time. Something worse. I barely made it 3 steps before vomiting. Everything came. Up the berries. The little water I'd found, bile, more bile, until I was dry heaving. When it stopped, I collapsed onto my side. The world tilted. My vision blurred. I lay on the cold ground, too weak to move. That was when I thought of Aurelia. My wife, my beautiful wife. She loved nature and the mountains. Everett, she used to say we're lucky to live in California. She died 5 years ago. Lung cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to goodbye. When she was gone, I thought the pain would kill me. It didn't. I kept going. I ran my 3 embassies. I lived in a house in the Sacramento suburbs. I kept her memory alive. That house, 3 bedrooms and a backyard, was worth maybe $300,000. And their Mossy's 3 locations across Sacramento. I built them from nothing. 35 years of long days dealing with insurance suppliers and customers. They were mine. Profitable. The last appraisal valued them at over $1 million combined, plus my savings. $450,000 in the bank. A $400,000 life insurance policy. Money meant for my children when I died naturally. Not like this. Lying there with vomit on my shirt and berry juice on my lips. I remembered Donovan 6 months earlier sitting in my living room. At your age, Mr. Whitmore, it's important to have everything in order. Have you updated your will? I thought he was being caring. He wasn't. He was calculating, measuring exactly how much I was worth. Clarissa had grown distant after Aurelia died. She said I was difficult. Too much work. She suggested assisted living. Those places cost money. My money. Money spent on my care instead of going to her. So, no. Better to make me disappear. An old man lost in the wilderness. A tragic accident. Then inheritance. They didn't want to. Wait. They didn't want to care for me. They wanted me gone. And this forest was meant to be my grave. My own daughter sold my life for 3 E's and a house in Sacramento. I don't know how long I walked after that. Hours bled together. My feet moved on their own, one step after another without thought. Then through the trees ahead, a side, a structure, walls, a roof, a cabin. Hope exploded in my chest. People. There had to be people. A ranger, a hunter, anyone who could help, anyone who could pull me out of this nightmare. I stumbled toward it, forcing my way through branches that scraped my face. The ground sloped into a narrow ravine. I half walked, half slid downward, grabbing roots and rocks to keep from falling. My bad legs screamed with every step, but I didn't care. There was shelter. There was hope. When I reached it, that hope began to crack. The cabin was old, very old. The wooden walls were gray with rot. Windows were broken, some missing entirely. The door hung crooked on rusted hinges. And the smell, even outside, I could smell it. Mold, decay, death. I pushed the door open anyway. It creaked a long, painful sound. Inside was worse. Cobwebs stretched from ceiling to floor, thick as curtains. Dust coated everything. In the corner, I saw movement. Rats, big ones. They scattered when I stepped inside. Claws scratching the floor. "Hello?" My voice came out as a croak. "Is anyone here?" Nothing. Just scurrying inside the walls. I searched anyway. Cabinets, shelves, corners, looking for food, water, anything. They were empty. Dust, cobwebs, dried insects. The floor groaned beneath me. A board cracked. I froze. The whole place felt unstable, ready to collapse. Then something flew at my face. I screamed and ducked. A bird burst from the rafters' wings, beating wildly. It escaped through a broken window, leaving my heart racing. Then I felt something run across my foot. I looked down. A rat. Huge. Its eyes glowed red in the dim light. It stared, squealed, and ran. I ran too, out of the cabin, and back into the forest. I would rather die outside than inside that rotting trap. I kept walking. I had to. The sun moved across the sky. My throat burned with thirst. My vision blurred. Then I saw him. A man, a real person about 50 yards away, walking along a narrow trail. "Help!" I tried to shout. "Please help me!" He stopped, turned, looked at me. "I'm lost." I waved my arms. "Please." He saw me. We made eye contact. His face changed. His eyes widened. He stepped back. "No, wait." I stumbled toward him. "Please." He ran. He turned and ran as if chased. "Wait, I'm not." He was gone, swallowed by trees. I tried to follow, tried to run. My legs folded. I collapsed to my knees. Then I understood. I saw myself through his eyes. An 80-year-old man, filthy, bleeding while bearded. I looked dangerous, mad. He wouldn't call for help. He was fleeing. I was alone again. I collapsed onto my side and cried. Loud, broken sobs, like a lost child in a supermarket, calling for someone who would never come. My last hope had seen a monster, and it ran. I don't know how. Many days had passed, 4 or 5. Time no longer meant anything. I knew only hunger. Hunger that had moved beyond pain into something else. Something that made me see things that weren't there. I would see a plate of scrambled eggs resting on a rock. Blink, and it vanished. A sandwich on a tree stump. Blink, gone. My mind was betraying me, showing me what my body screamed for. My stomach had stopped hurting. That frightened me. Pain meant my body was still fighting. Silence meant it was giving up. I stumbled through the forest, barely aware of where I was going. Then I saw it. A tree with small orange fruits hanging from a branch. Real fruit, not a hallucination this time. I stared for a long moment, waiting for them to disappear. They didn't. The branch was high, 10, maybe 12 feet up. At 80 years old, I hadn't climbed a tree in 6 decades. But those fruits hung there like drops of hope. And I was so hungry, so desperately, impossibly hungry. I had to try. I found a foothold in the trunk, a knot worn smooth by weather. I tested it with my weight. It held. I reached up, grabbed another branch, and pulled myself higher. My arms shook. My legs trembled. Every muscle screamed that this was insane, that I would fall, that I would hurt myself. But I kept climbing, one foot, then the other. My hands found another branch. I pulled. My shoulders burned. My fingers cramped. I was 6 feet up, then 8. The fruits were closer, just a little more. My foot slipped. I hugged the trunk hard, pounding. Don't look down. Just keep going. 10 feet. The fruits were right there. Orange, beautiful, real. I reached. My fingers stretched, almost. I shifted my weight to reach farther. My foot landed on what I thought was solid. Crack! The world tilted. I saw the branch break in slow motion. Felt my grip slide away. Then I was falling. Sky, trees, ground, sky, trees, ground. I hit hard. For a brief moment, there was nothing. Then the pain arrived. My left leg exploded with agony. Not pain, agony. A white-hot force that shot up my spine and swallowed everything. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My lungs forgot how to work. I lay there, mouth open, drowning in it. I couldn't move, couldn't think, only feel. When I finally breathed, the scream that tore out of me didn't sound human. It sounded like an animal dying. My leg, oh God, my leg. I forced myself to look, and instantly regretted it. It was wrong, twisted at an impossible angle, swelling fast, turning purple and black. I could see bone pressing against skin. Broken, worse than broken. I was 80 years old, alone in the wilderness. No food, no water, no help coming. This was it. Not a hospital bed like Aurelia, not family at my side. But here on the dirt of the Sierra Nevada, my body failing, Clarissa had won. She didn't need to kill me herself. The forest was doing it for her. An old man wandered off and died. A tragic accident. No questions. Pain came in waves, each worse than the last. I tried to sit up and screamed again. Couldn't move. Could only lie there. The sun moved. Or maybe it didn't. Time felt broken. I thought of Aurelia, wondered if I'd see her soon. If she'd forgive me for trusting our daughter for ending here. I'm sorry, I whispered to the trees, the sky, whatever was listening. Then, through the haze of pain, I prayed for the first time since Aurelia's funeral. Lord, I whispered, if you're listening, please, I don't want to die like this. Not alone. Pain exploded through my leg again. I couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. I lay there helpless, my body on fire. This is it, I thought. This is how I die. I don't know how long I lay there. Minutes, hours. The sun moved across the sky, but time had stopped for me. The pain in my leg was everything. My entire world. Every heartbeat sent another wave of agony. Up from the shattered bone. I tried not to move. Even breathing hurt. I had to get up. Had to try. I couldn't just lie there and wait to die. I pressed my hands into the dirt and pushed, trying to sit up. The scream that tore out of me sent birds exploding from the trees. White-hot fire ripped through my leg. I collapsed back down, gasping, stars bursting behind my eyes. Can't move. Can't stand. So this was it. I would lie here until dehydration or exposure finished what the fall had started. Then I heard it. Water. Faint, distant but unmistakable running water. My throat was so dry I could barely swallow. My tongue felt swollen and useless. When had I last had water? Yesterday. 2 days ago. I couldn't remember, but it was close. Maybe 100 yards, maybe less. If I could reach it. I couldn't stand, but I could crawl. I rolled onto my stomach. Lightning shot through my broken leg, but I bit down until I tasted blood and stayed silent. I dug my elbows into the ground and pulled. My body slid forward. 6 in. 6 in. Again. Elbows pull. Drag. My broken leg scraped behind me like dead weight. Every movement was agony, but I kept going. Pull. Drag. Pull. Drag. The ground shredded my arms. Rock scraped my elbows raw. My fingernails cracked as I clawed at roots and stones. Blood made my hands slippery. 10 feet, maybe 10 feet in an hour. The sound of water grew louder. It pulled me forward like a rope. Pull. Drag. My vision blurred. Sweat or tears streamed down my face. I couldn't tell anymore. 20 feet. 30. Each yard felt endless. My body begged me to stop, to give up, but I could hear it now. Water bubbling over rocks. Cool, clean, alive. Just a little more. My hand touched something wet. Moss. I'd reached the stream. I pulled myself forward one last time. My face dipped into the water. I couldn't lift my head. I turned my mouth sideways and drank. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever tasted. I drank until I choked, coughed, then drank again. The water was so cold it hurt my teeth, but I couldn't stop. I was desperately thirsty. I dragged myself until I lay half in the stream, half on the bank. The cold soaked through me, but I didn't care. There was water. Finally. Then my body began to shut down. The adrenaline was gone. I had nothing left. The edges of my vision darkened. The sound of water faded. This is it, I thought. At least, I got water. Then I heard voices. Real or another hallucination. Shapes moved. People. I tried to speak. No sound came out. Hands touched me. Warm. Real. A face appeared above me. Dark skin. Black eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Strange words. A language I didn't know. More hands lifting me. Were they saving me? Or was this just another way to die? I wanted to ask. To thank them. To beg. But the darkness pulled me under, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, the world had changed. I was no longer by the stream. I was indoors inside a small wooden house, dark but warm. Shadows moved around me. 3, maybe 4 people with dark skin and long black hair spoke in a language I had never heard. I tried to sit up. Pain shot through my leg. Someone gently pressed a hand to my shoulder, speaking softly. I flinched. It's okay. A different voice. English. American English. I turned my head. A young man, maybe in his late 20s, crouched beside me. He looked like the others, but wore jeans and a faded flannel shirt. You speak English? I whispered, my voice breaking. Yeah. I'm Beckett, he said with a gentle smile. You're safe. These are my people, the Shadow Ridge clan. We found you by the stream yesterday. You were barely breathing yesterday. I'd been unconscious for an entire day. Where? I tried to ask, but my throat was painfully dry. Beckett lifted a cup to my lips. About 3 hours walk from Highway 50, deep, in the mountains. We've lived here for generations. I drank clean water, cold, real. Then I started crying. I couldn't stop. Everything I'd held in 4 days poured out. Beckett said nothing. He just stayed beside me until I was done. Afterward, I told him everything. Clarissa Donovan, the picnic, the crushed sleeping pills, being abandoned so they could inherit Mize and my money. Beckett's expression hardened as he translated my story to the others. An older woman covered her mouth. A man shook his head. In disgust, they spoke rapidly, one word repeating again and again, sharp with judgment. They can't believe a daughter would do that, Beckett said quietly. To us, family is sacred. Over the next weeks, they saved my life. An elder woman treated my leg with herbs that smelled sharp and earthy, wrapping it tightly with cloth. The swelling slowly faded. The pain eased. They fed me hot soup, thick bread, clean water. I slept on soft blankets while the forest breathed beyond the walls. Beckett visited daily. We talked about his life growing up between worlds and mine-running garmacies in Sacramento for 35 years. He told me he'd lost his mother young and been raised by the entire community. Family isn't always blood, he said one evening as we watched the sun sink through the trees. Sometimes it's the ones who find you when you're lost. I thought about my daughter leaving me to die, about strangers who owed me nothing, but gave me everything. When I could walk again, leaning on a carved wooden cane they'd made, I decided, I need to go back. I told Beckett. For revenge, for justice, I said, if I don't stop them, they'll believe murder is acceptable as long as you don't get caught. He nodded. Then we'll help you. 3 of them walked with me through the forest for hours, moving slowly so I could keep up. At Highway 50, Beckett gripped my shoulder. You come back, he said. You're family now. I couldn't speak. I only nodded. A truck driver picked me up and drove me to Sacramento, without question. When he dropped me near my house, I stood there with my cane staring at the street I'd known my whole life. Looked the same, but I wasn't. I saw the black wreath from half a block away, a large black wreath hanging on my front door. I leaned on my cane staring. My hands started shaking. As I got closer, I saw the sign beneath it. Rest in peace, Everett Whitmore, 1944-2024. Beloved father and businessman. They declared me dead. Mr. Whitmore. A voice behind me. I turned. Mr. Leopold from next door stood on his lawn, his newspaper falling from his hands. But you, they said you were dead. Mrs. Constance appeared on her porch, her hand flying to her mouth. Young Jameson dropped his skateboard. It clattered loudly on the sidewalk. They said you slipped and fell during a mountain hike. Mrs. Constance whispered, tears already streaming down her face, that they couldn't find your body. They had a memorial service last week. My jaw clenched. A memorial service. While I was crawling through the forest with a broken leg, I turned back toward my house. I could hear voices inside. Laughter. I pushed the door open. The scene inside made my blood boil. Clarissa and Donovan Merrick sat at my dining room table surrounded by papers, contracts from my 3 embassies, my savings account statements, life insurance documents showing $400,000. But it wasn't just the papers, it was everything else. Furniture, tagged with labels for Clarissa. Sell $500. Donate. My bookshelf, the one I'd built with my own hands 30 years ago, had been torn apart. Books I'd collected over a lifetime were stacked in cardboard boxes like garbage. The wedding photo of Aurelia and me, the one that had hung above the fireplace for 40 years, lay face down on the floor, and my reading chair, the leather armchair, where I'd sat every evening reading for 3 decades. There was a price tag stuck to it. Sell $500. They were selling my life piece by piece. Donovan looked up first. The color drained from his face like he'd seen a ghost, because he had Clarissa. Turned around, the paper slipped from her fingers. Dad! Her voice came out as a croak. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Theodore burst into the room, Juliana right behind him. Dad! Theodore's face crumpled. He ran to me, throwing his arms around me. Oh, my God, Dad, you're alive. He was crying, his whole body shaking. I thought they told me you slipped and fell off a cliff. That they searched for days, but couldn't find your body. I've been crying for 2 weeks. Juliana stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming. I hugged my son tightly. Then over his shoulder, I looked directly at Clarissa. Clarissa, I said quietly. Why didn't you tell your brother about that wonderful picnic you planned? Theodore pulled back, looking between us, confused. I told him everything. The Sunday morning smile, the juice with crushed sleeping pills, waking up alone in the Sierra Nevada, 6 days of hell, the deliberately erased tire tracks, the berry poisoning, the broken leg, crawling to a stream to die. Theodore's face changed with every word. Confusion became horror. Horror became rage. Tell me it's not true. He turned to Clarissa, his voice breaking. Tell me, Dad is lying. Tell me. Clarissa's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. Donovan stared at the floor. You let Dad die in the woods? Theodore's voice rose to a scream. You lied to me. You made me grieve for him. I spoke at his memorial. Surveys. I cried in front of 100 people. We didn't think, Clarissa started. You didn't think he'd survive, Theodore shouted. You thought you'd get away with murder. Juliana was sobbing now, clutching Theodore's arm. The neighbors had crowded into the doorway. Mr. Leopold's face was white with fury. Mrs. Constance was crying. Jameson had his phone out recording everything. I looked at the dining room table, at the contracts dividing up my life's work, at the price tags on my memories, at my daughter who tried to kill me for 3s and some cash. And then I heard its sirens getting closer. I called the police from the highway before I came home. I said calmly. I also called the newspapers because this won't be quiet. All of Sacramento's going to know what you tried to do. The police walked in, and behind them reporters with cameras. 2 officers surveyed the scene. The contracts spread across the table. The price tags on furniture. The black wreath still hanging outside. One officer's jaw tightened. Mr. Whitmore, the lead officer, approached me. We received your call. Can you tell us what happened? I told them everything again. The Sunday picnic. The sleeping pills. 6 days in the Sierra Nevada. The erased tracks. The broken leg. Crawling to survive. The reporter's cameras flashed. One was crying. We can confirm his story. Mr. Leopold stepped forward, his voice shaking. They told us he was dead, that he'd slipped and fallen off a cliff. They even held a memorial service 2 days ago. Mrs. Constance nodded, wiping her eyes. We all attended. We mourned him. The officer examined my leg, still wrapped in Shatteridge bandages, my torn clothes, my hands scarred from crawling through the forest. He turned to Clarissa and Donovan. Clarissa Whitmore and Donovan Merrick. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder by abandonment, fraud, forgery of death documents, and elder abuse. The metallic clip of handcuffs echoed through my living room. Clarissa's face crumpled. Donovan stared straight ahead, empty. As they were let out, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just emptiness where a daughter's love should have been. The story exploded across Sacramento. Local businessman survives daughter's murder plot returns for justice. My face was on every news channel. Reporters interviewed neighbors. The Pharmacy Association released statements. People I'd never met sent flowers and cards. The trial came 3 months later. Beckett traveled from Shatteridge with 2 elders. They testified about finding me near death by the stream, barely breathing, bones visible through my skin. I've been a judge for 30 years, Judge Harrison said, her voice cold as steel. Abandoning your elderly father in a remote wilderness to die is among the cruelest acts I've ever witnessed. You didn't just try to take his life. You tried to erase him, to profit from his death while he suffered alone. Clarissa Whitmore, 20 years in state prison. Donovan Merrick, 20 years in state prison. Everything they wanted. Their masses, the savings, the respect, gone. Their reputations destroyed. Friends vanished. Assets seized to pay legal fees and restitution. Theodore stayed. He moved in with me, helped me walk when my leg ached. We hung Aurelia's portrait back above the fireplace where it belonged. We rebuilt what Clarissa had tried to destroy. But there was something I needed to do. 6 months after the trial, I returned to Shattridge. Theodore drove me. We brought $50,000 in cash, food, warm clothes, medical supplies. When I saw Beckett, again, I couldn't speak. I just held him like the son I'd found when my daughter had abandoned me. You gave me more than life, I finally whispered. You gave me hope. Beckett smiled. You were already strong, Mr. Whitmore. We just reminded you. Before I left, I met with the tribal elders, showed them the updated will. A portion of my estate enough to build a medical clinic, improve homes, educate their children, would go to the shadow community, and Beckett would receive a scholarship fund. Family, I told them, isn't about blood. It's about who finds you when you're lost. Now, sitting in my reading chair, the one Theodore saved from being sold, I understand something I never did before. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoration. It's about ensuring good people are protected and cruel people face consequences. My daughter tried to bury me in the mountains. Instead, she buried herself. And the strangers who owed me nothing, they became my family. I'm 80 years old now. I've lived through a lot, but nothing prepared me for the moment my own daughter tried to erase me from this world. If you're listening to this grandpa story, let me give you some advice. Don't wait until it's too late to see who truly loves you. Don't measure family by blood alone. I built 3 MSCs, saved $450,000, and thought that made me successful. But real wealth is knowing who will stay when you have nothing left. Thank God I survived those 6 days. Thank God for the Shattridge people who found me by that stream. And thank God I lived long enough to see justice served, because not everyone gets that chance. This true story isn't just mine. It's a warning. Watch the people around you. Notice who asks about your will more than your health. Notice who smiles when they want something versus who cries when you're hurting. Don't be like me, blind to the greed hiding behind familiar faces. But if you find yourself abandoned, betrayed, left for dead, remember, goodness exists in unexpected places. Sometimes strangers become family. Sometimes survival is the greatest. Revenge. These grandpa stories teach us hard lessons. This true story changed my life forever. I'm sharing these grandpa stories because true stories like mine need to be told. Evil hides in silence. Justice grows in the light. So, if this touched your heart, don't just walk away. Leave a comment below. Tell me about the family you've chosen, not just the one you were born into. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel for more meaningful stories that remind us humanity still exists, even in the darkest forests.